What's up, everyone? Welcome to the God's Heart, Your Part podcast, where we are all about equipping and inspiring next generation leaders to be all that God has called them to be. Hey, we're so pumped that you are joining us here today. It's no accident. It's going to be an amazing episode. Before we get into it, I want to let you know if you want to help support the podcast, there's a Patreon that will be linked in the description. You'll get access to exclusive content, and so we'd love to have you join the fam. But without further ado, let's dive into today's episode together. Well, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the podcast where we are all about inspiring and empowering next generation leaders to be all that they are created to be. For this episode, I wanted to explore how to walk in confidence in all that you're called to be. So not just how to find out who you are and know your gifts, but really how to walk confidently and boldly. And I thought of somebody who I think personifies this ability and this gift, somebody who I see do this time and time again. They know how God's wired them, and they walk confidently and boldly into those things in both the business world and in the nonprofit world. And so I'm honored to have her on. She's a really good friend. She's become a really good friend of mine through a number of years now. And so if you would, everybody clap for Mel as she joins.
Thanks.
Mel. Hello.
Hi, Brandon. Thanks so much for having me on.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Thank you so much for taking the time, for being a part of this. Like I said, I'm so blessed to have you in my life, and I've learned so much from you, even just by watching, in terms of how to, one, identify your strengths and then be confident in walking in them. So I'm really honored to have this conversation with you. And so thank you for being here.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
Sorry.
Okay. So before we get into anything, Mel, just tell us about yourself. Who is Mel?
Yeah. So I have a couple roles, First off, I'm a mom. I'm a wife. I have a 2.5-year-old. He is great.
Yeah.
And I'm the COO of a home remodeling company. And I'm also recently the campus pastor of our church. So
Come
one of our
on.
campuses. Yeah, it's pretty wild.
That's so amazing. So you just have a couple things going on.
Just a little bit.
Nothing too crazy, just
Yeah.
campus pastor, mom, full-time COO. So what does a COO do?
Basically, anything operational, anything with efficiency, anything to make sure that from sales to delivery to the customer, we are doing well. We aren't spending too much, and we're being efficient.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
For a while, actually, I worked for your company, which
That's right.
was a great experience. You were like my boss's boss because you're high up there, but you were always amazing and so great. And so both, and now we get to work together at the church and do ministry with one another. So I've had the opportunity to see you lead both as somebody who's employed under you and somebody who now gets to work with you in terms of ministry. And so whenever I'm saying all these things, I've just been able to observe it over multiple years. And I can attest that everything you'll share is genuine and authentic because I've personally seen that. So for today's topic, talking about how to walk in this confidence as a leader, right? And so think about for young leaders coming up, one of the things I think we can lack a lot of times is just confidence, right? We may have a dream, an idea, inspiration, know that God has called us to something, but the gap is walking that out confidently in our lives. First off, how would you define what is confidence?
I think confidence, a lot of people, I think about confidence on how other people see it, but to me, what is more important is how you feel confidently with yourself, confidently with what you're bringing to the table, confident to the conversations that you're having, that you have something to offer other people. And not really, I think sometimes people get into a trap of speaking negatively to themselves in their own mind. And the biggest way I think to have confidence or to really feel confident is to believe in yourself and that you have something to offer to other people.
Wow. Break that down a little bit more. The inner thoughts, right? The power of that. And, because if you're not thinking positively or like you have anything to contribute, that'll kill the confidence. Can you break that down a little bit more?
Yeah. So, kind of like what you mentioned, if people have dreams or ideas or visions and they feel like
Yeah.
they're not there yet, or they feel like, oh, I don't have a really great job right now. What am I going to do with my
Hmm.
life?
Yeah.
I think sometimes it's easy for negative thoughts to creep in and be like, I don't have a purpose. What
Wow.
do I
Wow.
have to offer? You know, and
Hmm.
you stop yourself from even, moving forward and continuing to dream. I think some people, those negative thoughts, they even stop them from dreaming or have a vision, you
Wow.
know. And so if you can recognize the opportunities that you have right now, even if they're not in that ideal job that you think that you want,
Yeah.
I think that I, years ago, I was in a role that I didn't love,
Hmm.
and I was, what in the world am I going to do? It wasn't paying what I wanted it to pay. I
Yeah.
didn't have the experience that I was hoping to get. And I had someone actually tell me that because I'm a woman and because I was young, I couldn't be in management for like 10 more years. Um,
Wow.
and so I thought, oh, okay. So it was pretty discouraging, right? And I
you
didn't
said
really,
you said challenge accepted.
yeah, I mean I kind of did, I thought, well, let me show you, lady.
Yeah. Yeah.
But and ironically it was another woman telling me that,
Wow.
right?
Wow.
Which is crazy. You would actually think maybe a man would say that, but no,
Yeah.
it was another woman saying, oh, well, because you're
Hmm.
young and you're a woman, it's going to take you longer to do it. Probably that was
Wow.
her experience, which
Yeah.
was, sad. um but
Yeah.
I think that recognizing, now I can look back and think, okay, what did I learn and what actually
Hmm.
made me more confident by recognizing, no, I have something to bring to the table. I was created uniquely. I think
Yeah.
everyone has to recognize that they are created uniquely.
Hmm.
And just because there's 10 people in the room doesn't mean that you don't have something off to offer versus the other nine,
Wow.
you know?
Come on, that's so good. Um, what an example. I did not know that about you. I've never heard that before, but somebody telling you that. So, how do you, because I'm sure there were moments through your journey and through your career where those thoughts came back in, right? Like, oh, I'm not necessarily seeing the progress I want. And this person told me this years ago. How do you learn to control those thoughts and to say, no, these are not going to lead me, but instead I'm going to dwell on other things? How do you do that practically?
I think practically, I mean, probably not every single person who listens to this is a believer, right?
Yeah.
So I am speaking from the lens of someone who does believe in God, and I think
Yeah.
that something that helped me tremendously is when I was dealing with those thoughts, I would kind of give it to him,
Mm. Hmm.
and he would help shift my mind.
Yeah.
Um, Really, in my mind, it's a lens. So what
Hmm.
lens are you looking out of? Are you
Wow.
looking out of the disappointment, or the, where you think you're lacking? Are you looking out of like a lacking lens, or are
Wow.
you looking out of a lens that says, no, I can contribute here, no, I can
Hmm.
do something here?
Yeah.
And it's also recognizing the type of environment that you're in, if it makes sense for you to continue in that environment, or maybe you have to shift your attitude
Hmm.
to what that environment is bringing. I think that some people assume in the moment, they're like, I have to make this environment work, I have to make this
Hmm.
workplace work. And
Yeah.
they think it's, sometimes people get stuck in what I would call a victim mentality. And
Hmm.
they would say, oh, well, this workplace isn't working out for me. They're not giving me the opportunities I need. It is
Wow.
not the responsibility of the workplace to give you the opportunities that you need.
Wow.
Um, so I think that people need to just recognize in the moment, what can you give yourself the opportunity to do, and if it's
Wow.
not there, then you move on, and that's okay. Or maybe it is there and you just have a different attitude.
Mel, that's so good. That's so good.
Yeah.
I love that for the audience that we're really targeting, the next gen, because there is a tendency to say, "Oh, I'm kind of entitled to this workplace that's gonna automatically give me X, Y, and Z before, and I've been guilty of this too, before I really put in the front end work to say, well,
Hmm.
here's what I actually bring to the table. So I think that's really good. Um, so yes, confidence, I think, looks like everything you just said, which is knowing, um, you bring something unique to the table, you're gifted, and then also being willing to, walk in that. But something I think people confuse is the idea of confidence and arrogance a little bit, right?
Hmm.
Um, and I think those two things can get confusing. Can you speak a little bit to the difference between walking confidently and walking arrogantly? Another thing I'll say too, I don't mind if you speak. You're a pastor, right? So if you want to speak through a Jesus lens, that's totally okay. But for anyone listening who may not, hold that, just know the truths. Many of them can still apply to your life. But can you speak a little bit to that arrogance versus confidence?
Yeah. I think a lot of times with arrogance, where does that lead you? That leads you to putting other people down.
Mm,
And if you're being confident in your ability and confident to what you're bringing,
yeah.
why would that result in bringing other people down? Why would
Wow.
that be? Why would that lead you to minimizing someone else's gifting?
Wow.
Um, I think that one of my things that I always try to assess in my mind
Hmm.
whenever I am working on a team is I never want to be the smartest person in the room. I'm sure you've heard other
Mm.
people say that, right? But
Yeah.
it's
Yep.
something, um, and if you think that you are the smartest person in the room and you think that you have the most to offer, one of two things. Either you're not valuing other people's gifts, so you're actually acting a little bit arrogant, right?
Wow.
Or
Yeah.
not really confident, arrogant. Or number two, maybe you have just outspent your time there, and you've sometimes you
Mm.
outgrow, and so then you need to move on.
Yeah.
Um, but I think more so it's usually number one, where you're not valuing um, the members of your team's gifts and the people around you, and you think that you have to provide all the answers.
Wow.
One of my favorite things is when people who are on my staff bring me ideas to make something better,
Yeah. Yeah.
because one of my jobs is to make us more efficient, make
Hmm.
things better. And if I'm always the one who says, okay guys, we got to make this change, we got to do this, you're
Mm.
just dragging people along.
Wow.
But the best thing is when other people say, who are doing it every day, say, hey, you know what, we can make it better this way. And
Mm.
I think that sometimes insecure leaders, if that person who is a couple, steps down from them per se,
Yeah.
has an idea and it's not theirs, they they might have pride get in the way
Wow.
and not want to take that, what that idea that someone has because it wasn't their idea. Meanwhile, it could
Mm.
better the whole company.
Mm. Hmm. Hmm.
So I think that that goes into confidence as well. As a leader, you have to be confident in yourself to take other people's ideas and
Mel,
make them better.
that's so rich. That is so rich right there. It's yeah, it's being sure about who you are and your gifts,
Hmm.
but so sure and so confident that you're not intimidated by other people. You actually want to empower them. I think I've I've asked that question, the arrogance versus confidence, to like a few people. I've never heard that angle. And
Mm,
I think that's so beautiful and powerful. Um wow, that's amazing. So thank you for sharing that. Um
yeah.
Along your personal journey, have there ever been moments where you have one either experienced like and I didn't prep this question, I'm sorry, but
It's okay.
where you've experienced like just such a confident leader or an arrogant leader, and what was that experience like, and how do you navigate that terrain?
Yeah, I think that I have experienced both. I think
Hmm.
that what you remember are the arrogant ones.
Mm.
or the insecure ones. Because why? Because they had a negative impact, just
Yeah.
like someone
Yeah.
remembers, the bad things more than the good things.
Yeah.
Um, and what I remember about the the arrogant leaders, or the ones who I would actually consider insecure, was the negative words that they would speak to me.
Hmm. Hmm.
And the negative words that, like, I had someone tell me that I was on a sinking ship and there was nothing I could do about it. And it was
Wow.
during a time of transition for me when I was stepping into a new role. And
Hmm.
really, this person was just, they had some things to work through themselves, but they were
Yeah.
kind of projecting that on me. But they were someone who really should have been an authority. And
Hmm.
I remember walking away from that and being like, wow. And I struggled with those words for a while because they played in my mind. Like, am I making the
Wow.
wrong choice? Am
Wow.
I going to mess this all up? Um,
Hmm.
and I think that when a leader speaks over you, we are all human. So we have to have grace for those people as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
I do not speak perfectly. I am sure that I have said not nice words to people that they
Yeah.
remember, just like I remember those words, right?
Hmm.
And I'm sure that wasn't that person's intent, but I think that we just have to pay attention to the words that are we're speaking over people.
Yeah.
But also, if someone is speaking over words to you and it makes you feel down or negative, um, you have the right to assess that and determine how you want that to affect you and how long you want it to affect you.
Mm.
And so I would say that that's kind of my experience with some people who would maybe be an arrogant
Yeah.
leader.
Yeah.
And then a confident leader, have been people who have taught me how to uniquely identify what my gifts are.
Mm.
People who have championed me growing, moving forward, trying things that they probably knew that I would not succeed overly well, but still let me do,
Yeah. Yeah.
because you have to learn. And really, it's an empowering leader.
Mm.
And those people are gifts. And they help shape you, even more than the disempowering, arrogant
Yeah.
ones.
Yeah. No, that's really good. You brought this up, the idea that the confident leaders help pull out the strengths in you and help make you aware of that. Now, I know that that's something that you're also really passionate about because I think it can add a challenge to walking in confidence if you don't really know how you're wired, who you are,
Hmm.
how you're gifted, because you'll just try to kind of be something that you're not. And so I know that you're really passionate about identifying and helping other people to identify the strengths within them. Can you speak a little bit to um, the importance of that, as well as practically maybe how some young leaders can do that? Maybe they're like, okay, I've got this willingness to go, but I just don't know how to know how I'm gifted. Like, how would you instruct them? How would you give them feedback? And what would you have to offer them?
Yeah. So I think one of the greatest gifts that I received as a young leader was someone sharing with me how important it is to recognize your strengths and your gifts.
Yeah.
So what ends up happening is you have awareness of, kind of like what I talked about before, what you bring to the table.
Mm-hmm.
You also become aware of what do you naturally not tend to lean towards, what naturally doesn't give you energy, and that
Yeah.
doesn't give you an excuse to not do it, but it should enable you to plan your day, plan your activities, plan your job,
Yeah.
um, based off of what gives you energy. And I think that once you start to have an understanding of that, what is really cool and what was kind of unexpected for me in the beginning was how that changed how I viewed other people. So when I'm
Wow.
working with them or I'm leading them, because I have awareness of what strengths are, um, I would start to look at someone who was different than me and be like, okay, what could possibly bear their strengths? What energizes them?
Hmm.
How do I have to interact with them? And it's almost a way of respecting people in a different way because you're coming at them at an angle that maybe will energize them more. Um,
Wow.
so I think practically, one of there's many different assessments out
Yeah.
there. Mine that really I think is great is Strength Finders.
Yeah.
Um, so, anyone could take that. I would recommend coaching is such an important thing. And there are nonprofit type coaching people out there. So you can find things that you can receive coaching and not have to pay a lot of money. But it's
Yeah.
one thing to take an assessment, but it's another thing to actually talk through that with someone.
Yeah.
um, because a lot of the behaviors that we have, the strengths, and how we act them out, they don't just show up in the workplace. They show up in our
Yeah.
marriage, in my
Yeah.
marriage. They show up with my child. They
Yeah.
show up in my friendships.
Yeah.
Um, and, you know, we can't pretend that we all function in the same way. Like,
Wow.
you have very different gifts than I have, right?
Yeah.
And one of the amazing things is when we get to work on something together, we are
Hmm.
going to bring more to that project or to that idea because we're not it's like a
Wow.
table,
Yeah.
like if a table only has one leg, it's not serving you dinner. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? You're
Yeah.
not eating dinner at it.
Oh, that's good,
Um,
Mel.
yeah.
Yeah.
But if you have multiple people there who are coming with those different strengths, now your
Yeah.
table is going to be strong, right? Your
Wow.
idea that you have is going to be better. That
Woo.
project you're working on is going to be better.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's so important to determine what those are. And I mean, there's many different tools, um, but you know, I think also one of the great things is sometimes you just know inside of you, and but sometimes I think we block it out with some noise in our mind and we're
Hmm.
not sure.
Yeah.
So that's another great thing to ask when you're in prayer,
Yeah.
because God created you. God
Mm.
created your unique abilities,
Yeah.
and he knows about them more than you do. So you should
Wow.
ask him about them.
Wow.
You know?
Mel, that is so rich. I love that table illustration. That's good.
Yeah.
Now what can happen, and I think what you're trying to say is if you are not confident in your gifts, you're gonna look at somebody else. Like it would be easy
Mhm.
for me to look at you, right? And say, oh my goodness, well, I don't have this strength or this strength or this strength. And for me to one, either try to as a result be something that I'm not. In other words, yes, so you need to operate in every gift to some degree, yeah, but I'm going to try to be you and not me if I'm insecure, right? Or
Mhm.
I'm going to try to just eliminate you because I'm intimidated by you if I'm an insecure
Mhm.
leader, right? So I think being confident means really seeing that beautiful value that you put together so well with that analogy, right? Which is, hey, we need all four pillars, all four legs, not pillars, on
Mhm.
the table, right? In order for this thing to stand. And so what do we all bring to the table? And so you can grow internally in your confidence with, hey, I bring this, Mel brings this other person brings this. And there's so much beauty in that. And let's even make it a little bit maybe spiritual biblical here. That's a very biblical way to
Mhm.
view how we're all wired as the body of Christ. Some are the hands, some are the elbows, right? Like we all serve a function, and that's where that APEST comes into play, right? Some of us are
Mhm.
apostolic, prophetic, evangelistic, shepherds, teachers, but we need them all. And so, um, thank you for sharing that and putting that so beautifully. Can you talk a little bit about how once you're aware of your strengths, right? Once you
Mhm.
know this is who I am, how I am, how then you can internally be confident with yourself and not just feel like, oh, I'm faking it externally, right? Because if you're not really confident, it can feel like I'm faking it every single day. But then, can you talk about just kind of the freedom and the release of just, okay, I know this, I'm not trying to be anything else. And so now I'm actually able to operate at a higher level. Does that question make sense?
Yeah. And
Okay.
I think that when you know and start to believe your strengths, because I
Yeah.
have seen people take something like the strength finders and they actually say, oh, no, that's not me.
Hmm.
Um, and probably what that means is it's not developed. So really when you start to believe and know the strengths and the gifting that you have to bring, um, I think it's kind of like what you were saying. You're not trying to be someone else. You're not trying to put,
Yeah.
you're not trying to force your way into something.
Yeah.
I think it also gives you awareness to your blind spots,
Hmm.
um, and recognition to when people aren't wired like you, how you could drain them. So, for
Wow.
example, I'm a pretty competitive person. Okay, like I like to
Yeah.
achieve and I like to compete.
Yeah.
And if we're doing something, I will probably run you over to get it done, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that does not do well for the person who is getting run over, right? So
Yeah.
I need to be aware that
Especially as a
sometimes
pastor, Mel.
right, yes, no, we can build,
Yeah.
and um but when when I see something in, oh, that was a weird zoom, sorry, when I see something in front of me and I want to get there,
Yeah.
okay, sometimes it's like so much energy inside of me, I'm like, oh my goodness, I gotta get there.
Yeah.
um and if I run people over in the process of that, that's not good, right? So that would
Yeah.
be what
Yeah.
I would consider be a blind side, because like my blind side would
Mm.
be I'm not paying attention to the people along the way in
Wow.
the manner that I should. And sometimes you got to pay a lot of attention, sometimes you got to just pay a little attention.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and that's when you bring people along who have high empathy or high awareness of what other people are feeling,
Yeah.
with you to identify that.
Wow.
Um, but that doesn't give me an excuse to not pay attention to the
Wow.
people either.
Yeah.
Um, and because not everyone um, wants to compete,
Yeah.
not everyone
Yeah.
is interested in winning.
Yeah.
Um, and even if you pay attention at Thanksgiving, or Christmas, does everybody want to play the game?
Yeah.
No.
No.
No. But
That's a great point, Mel. Um, yeah, having that heightened awareness is really valuable, really important to really be confident. Because then you got to make sure, okay, do I have those people around me who one can point those things out that I might be blind to,
mhm.
but also complement and maybe their strengths are my weakness or not weaknesses, but areas where I'm not as strong, right? And
Mhm.
so I think that's really, really important. Um, so, and you kind of alluded to this earlier with that comment, and this is another one that I didn't send you or prep or anything. So, if you don't have anything, that's fine. But um, progressing in your career, your ministry, all of that, I am sure that there have been some affronts to your confidence that have come through things people have said or done, or just frankly, like some haters, right? Who are just
Mhm.
not in it with the best motives or agenda. How do you deal with the haters? How do you deal with the negativity? And how do you properly assess, okay, maybe this part is valid, but this part isn't? Like, how do you dissect that as a leader while maintaining confidence that I can still move forward even in spite of these voices?
Yeah. I think that along my career as a COO, there have been some moments where it was not good.
Hmm.
Business was not good. Some decisions made were not good. And the turmoil between some of the team, just because, like emotions were heightened,
Yeah.
um, were pretty heavy. And I would,
Hmm.
I would come home and, I mean, I would come home and cry.
Wow.
because things were so heavy, and I'm like, oh my goodness. And you feel a little bit out of control in the moment, and it's again the voices in your head telling you, either what those people said to you that was
Hmm.
discouraging, or it feels like it's completely doomed.
Yeah.
Um, this is going to be forever ruined.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it of course ends up not being, but in the
Yeah. Yeah.
moment it feels like that, right?
Yeah.
And again, I think that I personally don't know how I would have come out of those moments, or come out of them as um in a shorter time frame, if I didn't have my faith,
Hmm.
and if I didn't weren't able to give those to God to say, okay,
Yeah.
show me show me what I'm missing here,
Yeah.
show me what's actually happening. Because sometimes when it's really emotional or really heavy, um kind of going back to that blindness, what are you blind to in that moment that
Hmm.
you don't even recognize that you're contributing to a negatively as well?
Wow.
Like,
Wow.
where do you have to take responsibility yourself in that moment?
Hmm.
And usually God helps you see that.
Wow.
It's kind of
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
That's really good, Mel. No, I love that because I think I don't personally know how to disconnect the idea of confidence with my faith. So I think for some
Hmm.
people, if you're lacking confidence, maybe it is because you do need to lean in more to maybe God is who he says he is, right? And maybe
Hmm.
God has made you the way he said he made you. And I think whenever I start to lose confidence in myself, or the way I'm wired or whatever, it is mainly rooted in what you just said, which is I'm really losing faith or not losing faith, but I'm not really stepping out in faith fully the way that I maybe once did, or maybe the way that I should be to say, no, this is what I believe because this is who God is and this is how he's made
Hmm.
me. And so I think, yeah, having that anchor point of faith is so important whenever we're talking about leadership, especially Christian leadership. Um, I think kind of to like go back to that one question, right? Arrogance versus confidence.
Hmm.
I've always said I think the difference is arrogance is look at me, confidence is look at God, right? And it's really just okay because God made me, He gave me everything. So like I think that is really important, and I'm glad that you keep coming back to that because faith is key, I think, to Christian leadership because it
Yeah.
shouldn't point back to us; it should all point to Him. And so whenever people say things, or it may feel like everything's falling apart around me because of different things, we can fall back because he's the anchor. We're not. He's the anchor. The organization is not, right? And so he's what really counts. So I think that's really beautiful and that's really good.
Yeah. And
Um,
if you
yeah,
if you want, this is kind of, you didn't really ask this question, but
yeah.
um
Ask
you
it and then
know
answer it.
well, so kind of what you're talking about, I'm thinking about this year. And
Hmm.
this year from a business sense is not great. So I don't
Hmm.
know if people are aware on this, that like the economy is not overly great right now.
Yeah, yeah,
And so our business the last couple years was like this, and
yeah,
now whoop, it's come back
yeah,
down. Okay.
yeah.
And what does that mean? There's layoffs. There's
Hmm.
a lot of hard decisions.
Yeah,
But what's crazy is this year. So I have loved Jesus for a long time. I've been
yeah,
saved for a
yeah,
long time.
yeah.
But this year, I think I learned how to sit with him and
Hmm.
be with him instead of just doing and serving.
Wow.
Um, and what's crazy is probably a year that should be really stressful,
Yeah,
and should be like knocking down my confidence, and
yeah.
should be putting me into a position of questioning, our business and what we're doing.
Hmm.
It has not left me with any of that.
Wow.
I would actually say it's been the best year because I
Hmm.
have learned how to just spend time with him and
Wow.
be in his presence, and it's the peace that is given, even when the world around you is crazy,
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
such a gift, you know. And I
Wow.
would relate that back to my confidence in him, confidence in what I'm doing, and confidence to keep going even though the circumstances are not
Yeah.
ideal.
Wow, Mal. That's beautiful. You've known Jesus your whole life, right? I mean,
Hmm.
you grew up in the church, but it's become so real to you lately in a different way. Whenever you say you've learned how to sit with him, what do you mean and how? What would you say to people
Yeah.
to encourage them to do that?
Yeah, so I would be one of those people that if you asked me when did you get saved, I would say a little kid, and I've been around it for a long time,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Um, and I think in 2021 and 2022, I started to have a different type of awareness, beyond just the Father's love, but also the Holy Spirit and Jesus, right?
Yeah.
And really what the power that
Yeah.
Jesus is.
Yeah.
Um, but this year, I think that kind of built off that is I started to practically just spend more time with him. I
Hmm.
started to, um, I think that I was one of those people that knew Jesus based off of what I learned at church, what I learned at small group, what I learned from other people talking about, but I did
Wow.
not know Jesus for myself. I
Wow.
did not know him intimately for what our relationship is. You
Hmm.
know, I think I knew him based off of what his relationship was with Brandon or his relationship was with the church or other people,
Yeah. Yeah.
but not myself. And basically, I also you mentioned Craig Rochelle,
Yeah.
as one of the people that you like to read and or listen to the
Yeah.
podcast.
Yeah.
So he has a book. It's called The Power to Change.
Hmm.
And I read that in March, and it could be a very typical change book, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
But one of the things that was unique to it and that I liked is he pointed everything back to looking more like Jesus.
Hmm.
And so every decision that you make or every habit that you're making, are you making that to look more like Jesus?
Wow. Wow.
And so I read that in March. And in March, I basically decided, okay, I am going to wake up in the morning. I did the cliche 5 a.m., wake up in the morning and read my Bible.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I did it.
Hmm.
And I mean, it's November currently, and so we're not even a whole year in,
Yeah.
and it's wild.
Wow.
Um,
Wow.
on one hand, I'm like, my goodness, why did I wait so long?
Yeah.
I waited 33 years, but I'm so thankful that I have done it now because um, what that designated time has done
Yeah.
has changed my whole life
Wow.
and my whole mindset.
Hmm.
And there is something that is so special when you're spending time with Jesus just one on one,
Yeah.
that you can't get just from church or through other people. You need to do it just with him.
Wow.
And so, talking about confidence, I mean, I would say I am the most confident that I ever have been in my life. And I think that people, I often get that they're like, oh, you're confident or you lead well. I'm like, cool,
Hmm.
thank you for that compliment. But
Yeah.
I still had the internal voices. And,
Yeah.
this year, I don't have those internal voices.
Wow. Wow.
And that's the difference.
Wow.
So,
That is so powerful. Um, Thank you for sharing that. Thanks for being vulnerable and authentic, Mel.
yeah.
That's so beautiful. Yeah, because I would say, and this is part of why I wanted to have you on. I would say I've known you 4 or 5 years now, somewhere like that, and I would say, yeah, you've always been confident and you've always been killing it, right? Like you're Mel, you're amazing. But there is something different, right? That is so clear you have this intimacy with him that now even that confidence just looks different, right?
Hmm.
And I love to just see that as a friend, as someone who gets to work alongside you. Like, it's such an honor, and I think that's so cool. And so thank you for sharing that. And so I would encourage every believer listening, like, really evaluate that. How much space are we giving Jesus? How much
Hmm.
room are we giving him? Because he will supply everything. You need more confidence, he'll supply it. You need more provision, he'll supply it. But are we making space for him? So I think that's a great way to kind of cap off the episode, Mel. So thank you so much.
Awesome.
What parting thoughts do you have for any next gen emerging leaders? This could be advice related to confidence for sure, or it could just be general advice that you want to give for any next gen leader.
Yeah, I think my overarching general advice would be recognize the opportunities you have right now,
Wow.
and don't just focus on what you think tomorrow or 10 years or 20 years can look like.
Yeah.
Just really take hold of the opportunities you have right now to lead your best, to be your best, and to figure out what you like, but also figure out what you don't like.
Wow.
And because it will all be used, all of those opportunities that you learned will be used later.
Wow. That's so beautiful. Thank you, Mel. You're
Yeah.
amazing, and what a legend. It was an honor to have you on and to be a part. So everybody, light up the comments, clap for Mel. She's amazing. Mel, I love you. Thank you so much. Thank you to everyone for listening, for being a part, and we will see you back here next time. Love you guys.